Hello. Welcome to the stream. Dave Snowback here from Snowback Games. How is everybody doing? We have a bunch of folks got here early today, which is awesome. I think that probably means you guys are adjusting to my switch of the stream time, which is great. I see we got Slacks. We got Arslan Aliyev. We've got The Clean. We've got Lufog. We've got Bastian Oli. Hey, Bastian. Welcome to the stream. I'm trying to think what time it must be by you. This is super late, right? In your time zone? Because you are a lot of hours off from me. Whew. What kind of characters do we get? The Clean got a bald dude with a beard. I'm a knight. Arslan got an orc with a beard and a shield. Slacks has got a monk kind of looking guy. Bastian's got an orc with some sick armor and a braid. Lufog's got an orc with a centurion. How about a lot of orcs today? The orc contingent is strong. 1 a.m. Jeez. So, how's everyone doing? How are your projects going? How, you guys playing anything cool? Most recently, I was playing, Cyberpunk, which I just beat this past week, which was awesome. I'd done everything I wanted to do. It's a fun game, but I'd gotten sufficiently bored and wasn't willing to put in, the 100 hours to do the side quests, so I beat it. It's a fun one. Yeah, I mean, by me, I've been, have you guys seen Arcane on Netflix? It's a League of Legends based show, but whatever, it's good. I've been watching that. I've been watching it mostly on my headset. Oh, speaking of headsets, look at what I've got over here. I got a Quest Pro, which I've kind of mixed feelings about. I had mixed feelings about it before I got it too. Like when they announced it, I was convinced in my mind I'm going to come up with some way to justify to my wife that I need to get a Quest Pro. But then I heard about all what was in it, and I was like, I don't know if I want that. Particularly there's no light blocking on the bottom, which drives me crazy in practice as well. There's like a light blocker accessory which I have ordered, but it's not like going to ship until December, which is ridiculous. So it kind of sucks. For doing mixed reality, it's nice in that you see more of the room, and when you're doing I'm going to compute on my VR headset, I can see my hands and my keyboard, but otherwise, I hate that. I hate the light thing. But let's see what Bastian's saying. Having a frustrating time with light maps, not wanting to do the right thing. Now you're going down a rabbit hole fixing light maps. Oh, and you're digging into XR tools. That's awesome. That's great. I have to catch up on what you and Malcolm have been doing in XR tools. But yeah. And the other thing with the Quest Pro that I'm still trying to figure out is I'm really used to the way that the Quest 1 and Quest 2 fit. And I know a lot of people hate it. It sort of rests on your cheekbones. But I'm so used to it. This one rests on your forehead, which so far I don't like. It bothers me. I think I have to figure out exactly how to adjust it right so it doesn't bother me. I don't know. I have mixed feelings about the Quest Pro. There's a lot of good things, though. There's a lot of good things, too. These controllers are really, really awesome. They're self-tracking. They have cameras on them, so that it's not the headset seeing the camera. The controllers see themselves. And what else? The picture is really, really clear. I did some mixed reality. I've never done mixed reality before. There were two experiences I did. One was this demo from Meta where you're there's this little rabbit hopping around, and you can delete your walls and see this world outside, which is pretty cool. My kids did that one too, and they really liked it. But then there is a mixed reality demo from the people who made I Expect You to Die, which is a great game. I love I Expect You to Die. it's just like a short MR thing where your room is trying to kill you. And I actually died like 2 or 3 times, and that was really interesting. I've never done mixed reality. I was never particularly interested in mixed reality, but it's surprisingly compelling. Like, it was really cool. There's like a part in the I Expect You to Die where you're getting like attacked by bees. And another part where there's like this panel that comes out of your wall and you're like trying to do a puzzle over there. It was cool. It was really cool. Anyway, yeah, Arcane the animation in it is so amazing, and the characters are really interesting. I mean, interesting insofar as it's like young people with young people problems. It's like if you imagine in your head like a bunch of 17-year-olds and like the sort of drama that they have, like that's kind of what plays out. But it's really good. It's really good. It's really interesting. Yeah. WebXR is possible. WebXR is possible. So last week we were working on what were we working on? My brain is I know that it got merged. This is how good my brain works on Friday. Okay, so we were working on not the rendering in that WebXR emulator. We were working on none of these. Not adding multi-view. Or yeah, no, we were actually okay. We were working on adding multi-view. So the PR to get multi-view for OpenGL got merged, which is fantastic. We were working on this one for like 2 months or something. And that means that WebXR in Godot 4 is actually rendering in stereo, which is great. Input is still totally messed up, which is what we're going to be working on today on stream. But this is a huge deal. Yeah. And last stream was great. I don't know how many of you were there for that one, but we like solved the problem we were struggling with in like the last 4 minutes or something like that. It was awesome. So yeah, in Godot 3, WebXR is more or less fully working. Everything that's all of the features of WebXR that are supported in Godot 3 are fully working, but of course it doesn't support everything that WebXR can do, and the performance isn't amazing. In Godot 4, so far all we have right now is stereo rendering basically is working, and we have to get input. There's some rendering issue with AR, which we're probably going to be working on today, since that was when the last time we were working on input was 2 streams ago. We got stuck though. All of the code we'd written for input, we never got to test it because of some rendering issue with smartphone AR. So that's probably what we're going to be banging our heads against today. But yeah, I think if we can get input working, we will be very close, like feature parity, between Godot 4 and Godot 3. The other issue that I've been working on for the last couple of weeks, which is not ready, which Bastian and Clayjohn have been helping me with a ton, is getting now that we have multi-view rendering in OpenGL, we theoretically can have OpenGL with OpenXR, which is not directly related to WebXR, but it'd be really great for OpenGL and OpenXR to be working with relation to testing with WebXR. It's really, really useful to be able to take a project, run it on OpenXR, see, okay, this is how it works there, and then run the same project on WebXR and compare what is different. To help with, did I get something wrong with how we're doing input, or is there some issue with like the color space? There is some existing issue, I think, in Godot 3 with the color space not being exactly right in WebXR, which I have not had time to dig into. But I would never know that such a problem like that exists if I wasn't able to run the same project like natively on the Quest and in WebXR. Rollback network works with WebXR. So I don't see any reason why rollback networking wouldn't work with WebXR. However, you have the same problem that you always have with rollback networking, which is how to handle physics. And so in 2D, I have my deterministic physics engine for Godot, Astrophysics 2D, which solves that problem. In WebXR, you're of course going to be in 3D. I don't know the best way to handle deterministic physics in 3D. I know that there's a bunch of deterministic 3D physics engines out there. There's like a couple of Rust ones that people on my Discord are always chatting about. So integrating one of those with Godot is possibly an option. There is, make your game not be physics-based. Can make, rollback work better there. But yeah, I think that's the primary challenge to bringing rollback to 3D is just how are you going to handle the physics? So anyway, yeah, this OpenGL on WebXR issue has been going forward. Ooh, I got some review from Bruvsk. Looks like Mac OS related stuff. I'll have to check that out later. But it's stuck on essentially, well, it's stuck on one thing, and then there's one other thing I want to do. It's stuck on it works, but it renders upside down, which I'm not entirely sure what the solution is there. In talking with Bastian and Klejan, I have a feeling that what we should do is just make OpenGL not render upside down. So the problem is that the way the OpenGL renderer works in Godot 4, and I think this might be different than Godot 3, is that it renders upside down, and then right before the render targets are blitted to the screen, it flips them over. And I'm wondering if we should just not do that. And I think so. Based on what Klejan said like this morning, I think he implied, or maybe directly even said, I'd have to look at the comment again, but that it's rendering upside down in order to match Vulkan, because the Y direction or something is different between OpenGL and Vulkan. And I don't know, but I'm wondering if the reason that we're trying to match Vulkan is so that shaders don't have to change which direction Y is, possibly. I need to chat with Klejan more about this, but I wonder if rather than rendering upside down, what if we render right side up, but then put something in the shader compiler that like flips the Y direction in shaders, and maybe that will solve it? I don't know. But Klejan was also saying that he wants to set up the OpenGL renderer to be able to render directly to the screen rather than always rendering to a render target and then blitting the render target to the screen. And in order to do that, we'd also have to render right side up. Right now, like the renderer has like a flag that you can change whether you want it to render upside down or render right side up, but the problem is that it just doesn't work quite right when it renders the other direction. So the other option is maybe we stick with this. There's a flag to switch whether we're rendering right side up or upside down, but we make the flag actually work in both options rather than having these weird issues when we're in the other option. Thought it was all about Vulkan now. Yeah, so Godot 4, its primary renderer, or there's two actual, it's so confusing. So there's like, it's not confusing, it's hard to say out loud. there's like the Vulkan driver, so it's using the Vulkan API, but then there's two possible renderers that can use Vulkan, and those are the primary renderers. The OpenGL renderer exists for WebGL, because there is no Vulkan on the web. There is WebGPU, but it's not quite ready for prime time. There's basically all of the browsers their implementations are too different because the standard is evolving. The main difference, my understanding, because I haven't done a lot of stuff with WebGPU, but my understanding is that the main difference is at some point WebGPU added its own shader language, whereas some of the earlier implementations used SpearV. So like you would write GLSL and compile to SpearV the same way that you do in Vulkan. And so it's like Chrome and, I don't know, something else still use the SpearV thing, and like Firefox and Safari use the new shader language. But we're still a couple of years away from WebGPU being a viable thing that we can do and expect it to work on a lot of people's computers. So yeah. OpenGL is for WebGL, which WebXR is running on the web, so it needs to use WebGPL, and then also for compatibility. So some devices don't have great Vulkan support, so being able to fall back on OpenGL is good for getting broader support of more hardware. Vulkan is still so new that especially on mobile hardware, there's still very crappy Vulkan drivers. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I mean, long term, maybe we'll be able to go away from OpenGL, which is kind of a shame because, like, you guys know I'm not very good at rendering. Rendering is like one of my weaker areas when it comes to game development. And OpenGL, like, I can understand to some degree. If I were to take my crappy rendering knowledge and try to do Vulkan, like Vulkan's just so much more complicated that I like OpenGL. OpenGL is nice to work with from a developer's perspective, but maybe one day in the far future when there's great support for Vulkan on all devices and great support for WebGPU on all browsers, OpenGL will be a thing of the past. But for the next, I don't know, let's say 5 years, OpenGL will still be a thing that we need to have for compatibility. So, yeah. If no one else has any updates about what's going on with you and your projects and whatnot, please share, because I love to hear about what's going on with you guys. Let's get to hacking here. I don't remember exactly what we left off on, because it was 2 streams ago, but I think like 4 weeks ago, because I was real sick for a little while, that we last worked on input. So I don't remember exactly what was working and wasn't working, or even what we did. Let's take a peek in Git. We'll use Git to remind us of what the heck we were doing. Okay, so it looks like I just have the one commit. Oh, right. So we were porting. There were some changes to the way input worked in WebXR in Godot 3 that never got ported to Godot 4 because at the time, like, I couldn't test it. And I just didn't feel right, like, porting all this code that I couldn't test in any way. So we ported that, and I think we just tried to test it to see if it worked, and then we got hit with that rendering issue. I think that's basically what it was. So let's try to recreate the rendering issue. Arslan Aliyev says, I heard somewhere that Godot 4 would have direct 3D 12 support. That is true. That is true. There is a PR for it. Pedro, whose last name I cannot remember off the top of my head, but Pedro is working on that. Things are advancing. There's a whole thing with shaders there too, like having to, I think, like transpile from Spear V to whatever direct 3D 12 uses. But yeah, I don't know. I hope that it will be in Godot 4.0, but regardless, it's in the works. It will exist. Time to Relax and Focus says, I remember some games use OpenGL well in old days. Yeah, I mean, there's lots of games, I think, that still use OpenGL. I mean, anything you make in Godot 3 still uses OpenGL. So the old days are still the nowadays for a little while longer. All right, so let's get this running. And we're going to have to test this on an actual device. We'll get my phone going. Because the WebXR emulator only emulates VR. It does not emulate AR, which is, I guess, the core of the input changes that we were porting from Godot 3. Of course, input, I think, also doesn't work in VR, so maybe we could work on that too. But I want to get this change ported over, and then we'll go from that kind of basis. We'll be starting from the same place as Godot 3 and take things forward. So let's get the Chrome debugger connected to my phone. And what was I reading last? I was reading about the economic outlook in the UK. Let's get off of that. And oh, we need to actually get an instance running. Okay, oof, lots of steps here. So I compiled before the stream started, so we don't have to compile, but we do need to export our project. Where's our test project? That is in here. Oh, and I have it on an old revision. When I was trying to figure out, oh yeah, the whole thing we were doing last week, when I was trying to figure out why, for some reason, WebXR was working on my computer but not on the Quest 2. I went backward in time on our test project because I didn't know, was it a change in the test project that broke everything, or was it a change in Godot? So let's get the test project back to the latest version, and then we are going to export from the command line because I'm still having this issue with Godot 4 on my computer. We're opening a file dialog in Godot 4 freezes Godot. It like locks it up. I've been meaning to make a issue for that, so we're gonna export from the command line. Which, yeah, this one, dev. I see there's some comments appearing. I'll take a look in a second. We want to export debug, and we want headless. This is web, I think. To build web. Index HTML. Hey Logan, welcome to the stream! The Clean, making some tools to populate databases with cube solving algorithms and game sequences. Cool, so this is still your VR Rubik's Cube thing? And cube solving algorithms. I'm horrible at Rubik's Cubes. I've never figured out what the deal is with Rubik's Cubes. I'd be really curious actually to see what those algorithms are. OpenGL still decent graphics API. Vulkan is needed for current generation effects. Yeah. Google Spreadsheet does not cut it anymore. Past the Google Spreadsheet stage. Onto the simulation stage, perhaps? Arslan says, what is your OS? Is it Linux? Yes, it is Ubuntu 20.04. Or actually, technically, Pop! OS, because I have a... my laptop is from System 76, which is the creators of Pop! OS. They make a sort of altered Ubuntu, which the best thing about Pop! OS for me is that the device driver support for my laptop is amazing. I've switched actually between Pop! OS and Ubuntu a couple of times while having this laptop, because there were periods of time where like there were problems with Pop! OS, like some instability or whatever. Like, I'm gonna go back to Ubuntu. But like the drivers, when I'm running Pop! OS, work so much smoother. I have like these weird graphical artifacts and stuff when I'm using the NVIDIA drivers on Ubuntu that are somehow magically solved on Pop! OS. And my window manager is i3. I recently switched only maybe 2 months ago. I had been using Ion as my window manager for like 21 years. And then finally switched to a more modern window manager, i3. Arslan is using Windows and Kali Linux. I've never used Kali Linux, but looks that's one of the ones that looks pretty, right? That's hard keeping track of all of them. Kali. Oh, so it's not one of the pretty ones. It's a penetration testing distro. That's interesting. Not a pretty one. Interesting. Okay, so what was I doing? I was exporting, which appears to have worked. That looks like a success. And now we need to, I'll make another terminal for it. We need to run Nginx in the build we just made, and then we can actually test it. So let's get is it loading? Hard to tell. What network am I on? Always getting this stuff going when we first get started is a pain. We'll get into the rhythm of it. Proceed. Okay, so now if I refresh, I should be able to see WebXR test. Okay, here we go. We have a cube, and we want to hit Enter AR, which is a very tiny button. I pressed it, and here we go. Here's the errors. All right, so yeah, here we go. Something where the render target doesn't exist when it needs to. And then I suspect that the other errors are sort of following on from there, because as soon as there's like any error, it breaks the flow and more things start to go wrong. So we're going to focus on the first error, which is about this render target not existing, which the first code reference, I guess, would bring us back to, well, here's where the error is happening, but the code that is calling that is probably the place we want to look in rasterizer scene GLS3 render scene. And the specific function that's getting called is render target get clear request color. So we'll find where that line of code is and then kind of look around there. Render target get clear request color. Okay, so we have the render buffer with a render target on it. We are trying to get the clear color. This is probably the first time we're doing anything with the render target. Yeah, up here we're just building up the render data struct here. And then we're just getting the clear color. And so for whatever reason, the render target seems to not exist. Because I think, oop, didn't jump to where I wanted to jump to. Didn't jump anywhere near where I wanted to jump to. I wanted to jump to here in texture storage. Yeah, so it's just this error fail condition, which is going wrong. Which, although it's returning black, so that shouldn't be fatal. But still, the render target should exist. What is the difference between OpenGL 3 and GLES 3? There's a whole bunch of differences. GLES is the sort of variant of OpenGL intended to run on mobile, and OpenGL 3 is desktop OpenGL. So they're both version 3, but they're not. It's the relationship is confusing. I think like GLES 3 is actually based on OpenGL 4. I'm not sure, but there's a bunch of differences. They're largely subtle. You can mostly use GLES as if it were OpenGL, but then there'll be like situations where like something is allowed in OpenGL but not allowed in GLES. And actually, Godot on desktop, at least Godot 4, I haven't spent nearly as much time in the renderer in Godot 3 as I have in Godot 4, uses OpenGL on the desktop. So it's not real GLES. It only uses real GLES on the web, because WebGL is based on GLES, and on Android, and possibly, I guess, on iOS too in Godot 3, because it uses OpenGL there. GLES 3 is more on par with OpenGL 4, yeah. And GLES 2 is based on OpenGL 3. Hey, Smaloki, welcome to the stream! Yeah, honestly, like, the differences just end up being confusing and, like, just catching you for, like, weird random things. So I don't know if you guys remember a bunch of weeks ago, we were dealing with this problem with why does multi-view, what situation did it not work in? Oh, yeah, so multi-view was working on the desktop, but failing when we were running on the web, and it came down to the dumbest thing ever. The multi-view extension on the desktop has two versions. It's like multi-view and then multi-view 2. And OpenGLES does not have a multi-view extension. It just has the multi-view 2 extension. And it's funny because we don't even need the multi-view 2 extension. Like when we're on the desktop, multi-view just plain is sufficient to do what we need to do. So I had just written the shader to just say, let's use multi-view. It doesn't matter if multi-view 2 is there because we don't actually need it. And it turned out to be that it wasn't working on the web because multi-view just doesn't exist in GLES. In GLES, there's only multi-view 2. So dumb things like that, or like GLES will be stricter about the way that you use certain APIs and cause an error where like OpenGL will just like blow through and make do and find a way to do things even though you hadn't strictly followed the rules. Anyway, they are very, very close. They're very close to each other. Okay, so we need to figure out how we can get to here with the render target being invalid. So and I guess I would really like to know, is the render target just empty, or is it set to some random value that is invalid? Let's actually look at the test here. So we're trying to grab the render target from the render target owner, and if it doesn't exist, okay. So we don't actually know straight out if that's invalid or if it's like empty versus like a real render, like a real value in the RID, but there's no associated render target object. Man, I'm having trouble with my words today. So yeah, because we're doing WebXR, we can't use a debugger, which is like the most annoying thing ever. What we're going to do is we're going to add a print statement. Printf, and how should we do this? let's do, I guess, let's do an if, keep things simple. So we'll say if RB render target is valid, and say printf RB render target valid, and then if not, we'll print something else, and that will answer that question. And then while we're waiting for all the compiling and stuff to do, we're going to sort of look around the code and see if we can find some other clues. All right, let us compile. Small. What games have you developed? A bunch of little games. I have one game on Steam, which is like a 2D tank battle game, which uses the rollback networking add-on that I made and the deterministic physics add-on? No, module that I made. I have been working on a VR voxel builder thing that I actually haven't worked on in a few months because I had to kind of just drop everything and focus on this WebXR stuff as we've gotten close to Godot 4 going into RC and getting released. Man, and like a bunch of jam games. I don't know, lots of stuff. Number one priority project is First Person Shoveler. That's a game that I worked on with Logan for a game jam. I quite like First Person Shoveler. Oh, here we go. This is a good way to answer the question going to my itch page. We made a first-person shoveling game, the best kind of FPS, which has just really great environment art by another Logan. And my main contribution was the shovel animations. I mean, maybe that wasn't my main. That's my favorite contribution. Probably my main contribution was the character movement. Oh, and here we go with the songs or the music. Let's turn that down a little bit. First person shoveling. Let's go. Here we go, the tutorial. Yeah, the web version, of course, is a little slow. All right, who's ready to do math? Woo! All right, let me through. Anyway, did our compile finish? Our compile did finish. All right, let's stop shoveling. And here we need to rerun this export. And I didn't do what I said I was going to do. I was going to look around the code a little more. A fun distraction, though. Everyone who played it was always like, oh no, math. I liked the math. Maybe you and me, Logan, are the only people who liked the math. Are you playing it now? Arslan, are you playing First Person Shoveler? Okay, let's try this again really quick. I'm going to reload the page here. We'll get our quick printf. So if it's that the render target has just plain not been set, then we need to kind of walk through the code and see valid, 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 valid. Okay. What did we get up here? Invalid. So it's actually not set. So there is some maybe order of operations that's happening while we are entering XR mode, where for some period of time, the render target is null. It's just not set. That's really interesting. That is a good possible clue. You're playing it? Let me know what time you get. We wanted to put a leaderboard in, which I think would have been amazing, but just kind of like ran out of steam at the end of the jam, as you know you usually do. It would have been really cool to have like an online leaderboard. But let me know what your time is. Okay, so it's in renderer viewport where. Oh, I wonder if maybe what's happening. So we here, I'll go show you. In renderer viewport, we will rebuild the render buffer if the size or the number of views has changed. And when we go into AR the size and the number of views might actually not change. Because the phone hasn't changed size and it's still a single view. So maybe that's what's going on. When we are checking, which I think is actually in here, yeah, if the size is different, then we will call this configure 3D render buffers, which will rebuild the render buffer. Although that doesn't entirely explain why the render target would be null. Because you'd think it'd still be set to whatever its old value was, not that it would magically get cleared to null. But this is a possible path. Let's chase down this. Let's chase down this clue here. We're gonna put some more print statements. The question is where to put them. I think if we go back to here, if use XR, what I kind of want to see is I want it to print out the width, height, and view count before we go into XR, and then the width, height, and view count after we go into XR. And so maybe we just print them out always. That might just spam the console too much that it will be unreadable, but let's try it. We're going to print width, height, view count. Yeah, the fact that like every change you do in WebXR, you have to recompile, re-export, and you can't use a debugger, like, is by far one of the most frustrating. Or wait, hang on, we don't want XR size, we want the viewport size. So the viewport has, what are the properties called on the viewport? Or hang on, viewport has size, right? Okay, fine. Size X, viewport size Y, viewport view count. There we go. Okay. So let's recompile and re-export. Yeah, the first time I was working on WebXR, because of this very frustrating compile, export, test cycle, I actually watched all of Battlestar Galactica again. And what I would do is, like, just during this part where we're compiling, I would press play. And then it would play for, 90 seconds or whatever, and then I would pause, and I would go start coding again. And I managed to watch the entire season, or not season, I'm sorry, the entire series of the Battlestar Galactica remake while working on WebXR. Compiling, the joys. But we can poke around and look at some other things, actually. So, draw viewports, and where is the actual error happening? The actual error is happening in render scene. I think draw viewports comes first. So we're rendering the viewport. Hang on. So we're looping through sorted active viewports. Draw viewport. Okay, and then in draw viewport, I think is where all the good stuff happens. That's where we'll get to rendering 2D and 3D, I think. And then 3D should take us into rasterizer scene. I was just distracted for a moment about the if condition for just OpenGL. I was taking a peek there. I don't like this kind of stuff where this creeps up, like where we have these specific checks for which renderer we are in these, like, supposedly renderer agnostic code, but whatever. We got to do what we got to do. Configure 3D render buffers, draw 3D. So then draw 3D should take us down to the, yeah, so this scene, does that end up being Rasterizer scene GLES 3 when we're in GLES. Renderer, scene renderer. This is another thing where, like, when you're in the debugger, you can just set a breakpoint and see the whole call stack, and I don't have to, like, walk through here. I could just see where did we come from? What is the path we took to get here? Okay, draw 3D. Render camera. Doesn't seem like that takes us directly there. Especially because it happens before this part. I hate this game. There were 2 treasures remaining. Okay, so draw 3D. Wait. Okay, never mind. Okay, draw 3D comes here. Draw 3D gets us to render camera. Render, scene render, camera data. Oh, and then we do some more stuff with XR interface. Or no, we only if it's null. Okay, so we set up the camera based on normal stuff if the XR interface is null. Otherwise, we do this XR specific stuff. Set camera, set multi-view camera. I wonder if somewhere in the code it's saying, like, if view count is greater than 1 as a way to check if we are in XR, making the assumption that XR is always multi-view. And we're hitting this because smartphone AR is not multi-view. There's still a single view. So here this actually seems right. It's getting the transform and projection for the view, and then it's taking the 0th one. So that seems right. I'm going to go take a peek at... Come on. Take me there. Go in here and see if this is doing anything that is generic for XR, but is just buried in this multi-view section. Doesn't seem like it, but let me look at the normal set camera projection. So this is nice that view, wait, view offset, view projection. Okay, I was gonna say that this is nice that the 0th one is set too, but it's actually just kind of cleared, like it's not set normally. Yeah, I actually saw, like, I don't know how the whole okay, so that feeds into the flipping things upside down. I don't know if you actually tried any of this stuff, Bastian, but like things get pretty weird when you flip. I tried flipping the camera upside down in 2 different places, and in both of them the back face culling reversed, but in one of them also the lighting got weird. So I bet there's a whole bunch of things making assumptions about which direction is up. Anyway, there's no smoking gun here, but our compile finished. So let's take a peek at what that gets us, and then we'll go back to exploring the code when we have a compile happening again. Exported. And now we can reload. So my theory that the height, width, and view count does not change when we enter XR is true. So here we are before we enter XR with 1081 and height 2052. Those are such weird dimensions. View count 1. And then we enter XR, and the next time around, it's the same width and height and view count. So we need to rebuild the render buffer when we've entered XR, even if the width, height, and view count has not changed. And we can verify if that's the problem by adding a terrible hack and just have it rebuild the render buffer every single frame, which we don't want to do in the end, but it will answer this question of will that fix it? And if it does fix it, we need to find a way to make it happen at the right time. So let's go to render viewport, and we'll go, oops, wrong button. Go back a little bit. Oh, that was where I wanted to be, I think. No, that isn't where I wanted to be. It is, we were a lot of places. Whatever, I'll just look for it normal. So we were printing out, we were in render viewport, we were doing a printf. There can't be too many of those. There we go. So the rebuilding the render buffers is this code, this function call, configure 3D render buffers. So we'll copy that, we'll go back. We will just always do it. And our viewport is, I think, VP, right? That takes, yep, the actual viewport pointer, right? Yeah, because we have the pointer here. And that will either totally break or give us the clue we're looking for. So let's give it a try. Or actually, do we need to do it after? Hang on. We might need to do it at a specific spot, though. So there's a point where where do we get? Okay, so we don't actually get the render target from the XR interface. We just do these override things. Well, we definitely need it to happen before XR interface pre-draw. Wait, I'm kind of confused here. So if the size, height, and view count doesn't change, we should be able to keep using that render target. Like, why can we not just keep using the same render target? Is there something that like is explicitly clearing out the render target when we switch to XR? Where is this render target come from? Who is actually managing the render target? So the viewport has a render target associated with it. So the viewport is managing the render target. If we go to, I guess let's look at the viewport node first. And we do set XR, should be here somewhere, right? Am I in the right place? Or set use XR, right? Because it's set use XR. Yeah, okay. So when we set use XR, we turn it on. We go here. We're not disabling it, which leads to kind of restoring it, but here we're enabling it. It's different. Reconfigure the 3D render buffers when disabling XR. They get reconfigured when enabling XR in draw viewports. But is something actually clearing the render target that's on the viewport? Let's just... Let's configure 3D render buffers. Okay, yeah, so... Huh. Ooh, I missed a whole bunch of things from Bastian. Biggest issue would be calling over from render buffer is already the right size of view count. Why would it need to be rebuilt? Yeah, I agree. Do we add something if it's XR? Our son, this game is harder than Dark Souls. Yeah, it should end up recreating the same thing, and if you use the overrides the render target is created, it doesn't even get used. It's a sin that this project doesn't have TypeScript here. Hey, Aldini Magnifico, welcome to the stream. It would be interesting to be able to use TypeScript for the JavaScript parts inside of Godot for the web build. Sadly, it's 2 a.m. for me, and I need to get up around 9ish. Oh, yeah, get some sleep, man. Take care of yourself. Thanks for coming, though. Catch you later, Bastian. Abo Lies, hi, welcome to the stream. I am doing good, Mr. Abo Lies. But I am baffled by the problem we are battling here. So it seems as though we are entering XR, which is for some reason destroying the render target. Or at least like clearing it from the render buffer somehow. Yeah, the other thing that would be nice to know is if the render target is null just on the viewport, or if the render target is also null. Or I'm sorry, if the render target is just null on the render buffer, or if it's also null on the viewport. So hang on, where is our print statement? Not this print statement. In render viewport, our print statement here. So this printf. And let's also check if VP render target is valid. We'll say VP render target is valid. Is invalid. Okay, so we already recompiled. I'm going to just quick use what we recompiled and see if we can get any interesting info from that. And then we'll recompile again. We'll start doing it actually as soon as this export is done. Time zones do suck. They're the worst. Splatters are on something, wish they were right. Able Eyes, are you creating a game? No, I'm not. I'm hacking on Godot 4 itself. I'm hacking on the engine. I'm the maintainer of the WebXR module in Godot, and we are trying to get it working in Godot 4, at least as well as it is working in Godot 3. Slacks, they make things difficult for sure. Okay, this did this thing. Let's recompile and go test it again, see what our print statements get us. Hey, Micah, welcome to the stream. I gotta see what everyone's characters are. Oh, Abo Lies got a pretty sweet old man with a spear and a shield. Micah got a balding fellow, very similar hair as mine, but with a much larger beard. And we already talked about Bastian and Slax's character. Okay, here we go. Let's enter AR and see what we get. So what was the new thing we added in that recompile? I actually don't remember. Well, we're recompiling again. Oh, and it just finished. So let's re-export and get the next printf that we added. And the reload dance. Come on. Okay, let's enter AR. Interesting. Oh, you know, I remember what we changed last time. We made it reconfigure the render buffers every frame. So this is interesting. So right before we crash, the viewport render target is still valid, but the render buffer render target is invalid. And I put the print statement before we added this. Let's switch that around. If I put this up here, oh, and actually let's look at the crash and see if the crash is in the same spot. It is, actually. Or no, this doesn't matter because this isn't related to the other. The other print statement is happening around where that error is happening. And so somehow by the time we get here, by the time we reach this spot, the render buffer render target is invalid. Let's see if it's valid at this first spot. I guess let's copy the same code. We should have access to the render buffer here, right? I think. Let's go look and configure 3D render buffers and see what viewport render buffers. This is the render buffer object. Yes, it is. So from the perspective of the other function, I'm so lost right now. Where's our printfs? From the perspective of this function, this would be VP render buffers render target. VP render buffers render target. And we will want to check that before and after we run this configure 3D render buffers. So we'll say before, after. Ooh, Mike has got exams this week and then have some more time next week to do some hacking. That is always nice. Yeah, okay. Let's run this code, or compile this code, I guess I should say. And yeah, we'll wait for that to finish. This is baffling. What could happen between... I guess we'll see if it's always valid here, but then gets invalid by the time we get here. What is happening between those two locations that could potentially do that? Oh, and I made a mistake. What did I make a mistake? No member named render target. What are you talking about? That's some render buffers. Oh, okay. Here we have the more specific. Okay, so what it's complaining about is that at this point, this code is renderer agnostic. And so we have this render buffers object, which is the parent class and not the child class that's specific to GLES3, and it won't let us access that. So we need to do some casting. What is the best way to do that? We could just do a direct pointer. But we won't have access to that class at this point because we're not in the GLES renderer. So we might have to add an include. Ah, this sucks so much. If we were using the debugger, like with sane development, we'd be able to see all of the properties. But because we're doing these stupid print statements. Or what is it? What is the include file? Rasterizer. Render scene buffers GLES3. Render scene buffers GLES3. H. Why does that not work? Render scene buffers GLES3. Oh, it's in storage. Okay. GLES3 storage. Okay, and go back to our print statements. And we will say GLES3 render buffers GLES3. Is that what it's called? Render scene buffers GLES3. Render scene buffers GLES3 RB equals. We'll cast it. Render scene buffers GLES3 from VP render buffers, and there's like a pointer. Is this one not in the namespace? Okay, that's confusing. A lot of stuff in the GLES3 renderer is in this namespace, but this one isn't. Okay, so we should now be able to do RB RB. Okay. Wow. That was some annoying stuff we had to do just because this is C++ and we can't use the debugger when doing GLES3. Hopefully that will compile this time. I'm sorry, and we're doing WebXR. Did I say WebXR? Did I say GLES3? One of the joys of doing web stuff, hacking on Godot web stuff. You're writing C++ code that's running in the web browser, so there is not a sane way to run it through a line debugger. Sane development, I know of no such thing. True enough, Micah. It always ends up being some weird little problem. Oh, and we have compiled. I just can't think of what could be happening to the render buffers. Well, I guess I don't know yet still, once we get these print statements back. But I have this suspicion. I have this suspicion that's just going to print valid all the time up here, and something else is happening between here and there that's messing things up. Okay. Let's jump over here. Refresh. Rerun. Come on. Now let's do enter AR and see what we get. Oh. Okay. Or no. Okay, never mind. So I was right. I was right that that we are getting valid both times. So it's not a matter of rebuilding the render buffers based on the render target. It's something else is happening. Something else is happening between here and there that's messing up the render buffers. What on earth could that be? This viewport set size takes us to render target set size. Render target width, height, view count. Let's jump into there. We say if the width and the height and the view count haven't changed, we simply return. I think that's what would happen here. Because if we look, the width, height, and view count has not changed through the whole course of this thing. Is this happening in the right order? So we're printing the width, height, view count. When are we printing that? That was in render viewport, I think. Okay, so we're printing that right before I guess I wonder if it does change, because that's before this code would happen. Let's make sure that, yeah, maybe my checking to see if it's changed was not good. Let's we'll say XR with height view count. XR size, and we have to go change these from D's to F's. This is using size 2 instead of size 2i. It should be using size 2i, but whatever. It isn't. Or I'm sorry, it should still be X and Y. And then XR interface get view count. Let's build it. What is this game about? Cube to exist. Not entirely sure what that's referring to. So, Abelaz, are you asking about a game that I am making, because I'm not making a game. I'm working on the Godot engine right now, and all that is in the test project is a cube, because that's all we need for the test project. When we get WebXR in Godot 4 working better, we can maybe port my test project from Godot 3, which is this like race car game. It's like a toy race car thing I use for the demo, which I had a whole idea for what that could be as a game and never really got into it to like implementing any kind of gameplay. But it's still a much nicer demo than the cube. All right. This looks good. Let's export. Yeah, so what if the width height is changing? I guess that would change the way I'm approaching this, for sure. I think my assumption that they weren't changing could be wrong. Okay. We have recompiled. We have re-exported. Now we're going to reload. We're doing all the re's. All right. Enter AR. I pressed it, or maybe I didn't press it good enough. Okay. So, oh, okay. View count 0. That's a problem. So the height and width is changing to insane values, by the way. 540, 2024-01. So okay, this is exactly half of this. Somewhere something is making some very VR-ish assumptions. I wonder if I have some code in WebXR that I just was like, we don't have AR yet, so I'm just gonna assume that this is going to hit some VR defaults. Let's get in there and take a peek. Okay, so get render target size. This is fundamentally where we're coming from here, right? Get render target size. So we are checking if the render target width and a height does not equal 0, then we return it. Okay, so that's sort of like a cache. Here we're asking WebXR, this is jumping into some JavaScript code, getting us the size. And as a temporary default, until WebXR is fully initialized, use half the window size. I have a feeling we are hitting this code. Why are we hitting this code? And then how are we getting a view count of 0? That's another thing. So what's that method? Get view count, okay. Get view count. I think we have found the problem, though. I think we have found the problem. Okay, let's go into here. Get view count. So if we have no session, if we have no pose, return 0. So we must have no session and no pose, but how? If we go over here, we see that we've gotten WebXR session started, at which point we should at least have a session. I suppose we might not have a pose yet. We might not have a pose yet. Do we not have a pose until tracking kicks in? Okay, so let's make the assumption that we don't have a pose until AR tracking starts. What is a sane default to return from this method? 0 isn't it? So 1, is 1 a sane default? There's also the possibility that we aren't hitting this case, that we're hitting this case and we're not getting any poses, which would also be a problem. So maybe here, let's return 0. Let's jump to the function that's calling this, which is WebXR interface JS CPP. And actually, what does this return? An int? Okay, so let's say int view count, and we'll say return view count is greater than or equal to 1, view count, or 1. So that will work with any weird data that we get back. Does that make sense? Can we roll with this? Let's roll with this. So it could just be that we're in a temporary situation where it takes a couple of frames for AR tracking to kick in, and once it does, we will have a pose. Or something deeper is going on here, and we're actually like somehow doing the WebXR initialization wrong. But I'm gonna kind of hope that it's the taking a moment for tracking to kick in, because it does take a moment for tracking to kick in, and I don't know what, or I guess I should say I don't remember what WebXR gives us when tracking isn't working. This isn't a problem we have with VR, at least not VR on the Quest, because if you are able to press the button, then you know that tracking is working. Otherwise, you won't be able to press it. Okay, so let's export. Yeah, I know there's also this old bug where if you lose tracking once the experience has already started, that it does something weird. What was it? Oh, it makes all of the 3D go away. Where what we should probably do is just keep reusing the last pose we have until tracking kicks back in. And so maybe we can fix that bug somewhere along the line as well. Okay, I accidentally like closed the tab here. Let me get back in there. Let's go back here. Okay. There's a cube game in the Oculus store. Okay, enter AR. Oh. Well, my phone is 100% in AR mode. However, I do not see the cube. It is failing to render for whatever reason. But that's a step forward. Let me... Okay, I'm going to scroll up so it won't be just scrolling forever. So we end up with a sane or relatively sane width and height. It's not the same width and height as we had before we entered AR mode, we had width is off by 1 and height is off about 350. Not sure what the deal is with that, but this seems relatively sane. Our render targets do not go invalid. Let's see if we can hit. Can we hit the red? I remember, Micah, you were talking about there was a thing I could hit to just see the errors, but I'm not actually sure how to do that. No, that's not it. All right, we'll go to the old school method and just scroll for the red. So around here, ooh, here we go. Output buffer is not enough frames. That's fine. That comes up every so often when you're doing a WebGL experience where Godot is busy doing a whole bunch of things that it actually isn't able to push a frame when we get to the next refresh. So here we go. We are before XR. Now we are in XR. And we are doing this divided by 2 width, which carries on for how many frames? A lot of frames. Really a lot of frames. Wow. Okay, that was like 20 frames before finally it looks like tracking is kicked in and we now have the right width and height. I wonder if the default shouldn't be to divide it by 2 and the default instead should be to just return the unmodified height and width. I wonder why I have that divide by 2 there. Maybe there is a condition in VR where like there's like a bunch of frames where tracking hasn't kicked in yet, and in VR that would be much more disorienting because your whole view is being covered. So maybe we can experiment with that. This is interesting. So I think that's the issue that we had before, but why aren't we rendering? We can get rid of a lot of these print statements. Oh, and I don't know if this configure render buffers is necessary. Probably not. We'll comment it out. Let's just do a git diff to see all the stuff we messed up here, so we can clean out those print statements. That was in rasterizer scene, GLES3, right here. Get rid of these ones. Yeah, so apparently setting the view count to 0 breaks everything. That's good to know. Apparently in Godot 3 it did not break everything, so we were able to get away with that. Oh, we can get rid of that include statement. That'll make compile slightly faster. Okay. So now we just have the mystery of why is it failing to render anything, which could be like a million different things. Where to start? So it could be tracking, although tracking is working in VR and the code path is basically the same. Let's go take a peek at that. So get transform for I, get projection for I. That is, I think, fundamentally where the tracking comes from, right? Let's go look in the C++ code. What have we got? Wrong one. WebXR interface JS. And actually, let me look at the header first. That'll let me get a overview of the methods. So get camera transform sounds like a reasonable place to be. So this is getting transform for I. I'm very confused. Oh, okay. So we have a member variable head transform. So where and how are we setting that? Get transform for view. So it looks like no. So we're still using it. We're not getting it. Okay. Process. Okay. Every time process runs, we are getting the head position by getting the transform for I0, which I guess we just decided was the head. And where let me go look at this get transform for I and just make sure that 0 seems to be doing what we think it is doing. Get transform for I. So if I equals 0, okay, so then we get it from the main pose. Otherwise, we check the left and right eyes. So in Godot 3, I don't remember if it actually uses like the camera transform for the camera. I mean, it must not, because it's using 2 different cameras for the 2 different eyes in VR. Is it doing the same thing in AR? And I'm assuming we still have a view. We have like an imaginary left eye. Oh, I missed some comments. Yeah, I mean, it's possible I could end up above or below it. I should have looked straight down and straight up. During your next compile back, try restarting the overlay. I think it has stopped working. Oh. We can just do that right now. Buttons, no. All right. Ooh, I got a cool helmet with horns. Say something. Let's see if the overlay's back in business. Projection for eye. Yeah, this is still like based around these old enums that no longer exist in Godot 4. So we'll have to make sure. I mean, at some point we should get rid of these old enums and just have this. What do I do? Have it just be based on view number, but that will be later. That will be after we get this working at some sort of base level. Then we can come back and make it better. Oh, there we go. There's Micah rocking a dress and a shield. Okay, so where to look here? Let's go back to WebXR interface js.h. Let's look at WebXR interface.h. Okay, so get camera transform is actually from the interface. That's good. I had this fear that I'd just have these leftover Godot 3 methods that might not be getting used anymore. But it looks like XR interface does have that get camera transform. Yep. And let's then go take a peek in the renderer. Where in the renderer do we start? I have a feeling it's going to be rasterizer scene GLES3. Let's look for XR interface anywhere. No, there is no XR interface anywhere. Okay. Let's look for view count. This is not the right place to look. Let's go back to render viewport. Let's look for everywhere XR interfaces in here. What we're trying to find is where it actually is configuring the camera. And we want to see which value it's using, and then we want to check that that value is sane. I'm still not seeing it here. Let's do, let's just search the whole code base here for, what was it, get camera transform? Yeah, this method name is used for a bunch of other things. Okay, so it's being called by XR server to get HMD transform. Let's look for that method, get HMD transform. It's basically never called. Interface get camera transform. Okay, so it looks like the only place that this function is ever used is in this center on HMD method, which you would use, I think. Sorry, I've not been sleeping terribly well this week. Sorry for the yawn. Which I think would be used for like when you hold down the Oculus button to like recenter your position kind of thing. So this doesn't matter. This is not used in rendering. So then it would appear that what is actually used in rendering, unless like we're updating a tracker for it and then it's using it from the tracker. No, it looks like trackers, at least in our code, are only dealing with controllers and input. So, okay. Then let's take a peek again at the header file and see what the method is for getting just the eye transform. So get transform for view. Get transform for view. And we want to see where it's called. Okay, yeah, we were here earlier. Okay, so we're looping over the view count. View count in here should be 1. So it should just put the 0th item, which then ends up in set camera, transforms, projections. And so what we want to know as if the transform and the projection look sane. And printing out a projection is going to be so hard to interpret. Let's start by just printing out the transform. Transforms 0. I assume that this is a vector 3. No, it's a transform. Okay, so then what we want is what's the word? Origin. Want the origin. So we're going to print transforms 0 equals f f f and then we do origin x, origin y. Just copy and paste this. It's weird that this one gets this extra parameter. Well, anyway, so this sets up the camera, which works fine in like 2D. I see no reason why it shouldn't, or not 2D, I mean works fine in non-XR, so I don't see why it shouldn't work in XR. We do also have the end of the pipeline where we are actually blitting this stuff to the screen, and I'm not 100% sure that that code can handle AR either. So that would be where is this code? I'll know it when I see it, or not. Let's look for some words that are in there. GL bind frame buffer. What? Oh, because I'm in the C++ code. Library. Yeah, because this is still in the JavaScript code, right? Yeah, here it is. It's right here. So this takes a texture, and we loop over the number of views. Yeah, okay, so this is like a code path that doesn't happen unless we're dealing with a single view, which is this is probably the only time I've tested this code. But this looks fine anyway. I guess we still don't know if the reason we were getting a view of 0 was because we didn't have a pose, or if it was because the view length was actually 0, but I assume that the view length is not 0. We can print it to be sure. Views.length. Do we need to do something in JavaScript to turn an int to a string? Like, I just don't even remember right now. Well, whatever. We can do this. We can do it with the comma. Views length. Okay. Let's try compiling this. See what we get. We should take a look at the project also, because I don't remember exactly what's in it. So we'll load up the Godot editor, take a peek. Oh, I completely forgot to like look at the overlay when you commented and got a character on there, Micah. But I'm glad that you tested it and I'm glad that it's working. Okay, so here's the project. Let's take a look at the code. Fundamentally, it looks like all we're switching between XR and AR is immersive, or I'm sorry, VR and AR is immersive VR and immersive AR. Oh, and there's a bunch of stuff to make the background clear, but we're not even to that point. We're seeing literally nothing. If we needed this code to make it work, what I would see on my phone is the 3D completely covering over the camera, whereas right now all I'm seeing is the camera. Okay, I don't see anything we need to worry about in the project, which I guess is good. We have compiled. Let's export. But as soon as we can get this to render even a little bit, we can test the input changes we did like 3 or 4 weeks ago, whenever that was. Ooh, geez, this is draining my battery like crazy. It was just sitting in AR mode on my desk, and I picked up my phone, and it was like really hot, and the battery is down to 39%. I got to remember before I put my phone down to exit out of AR mode. Okay, let's enter AR. Okay, well, we know for sure the transform is wrong. But we also know that we should be rendering gray over the camera, which we are not. We are not rendering gray. Oh, here we go. It kicked in. Tracking is there. Yeah. Apparently this is the x-axis. And it is going negative when I come towards me. I'm just double checking that the cube isn't around here. But I mean, we should be seeing the whole thing gray because we aren't doing the transparent viewport. So something else is going wrong. The reporting of the transform appears to be working. The view's length is correct. And interestingly, yeah, we got 154 frames of getting the wrong transform. And then tracking kicked in. We got the right transform. It started reporting us a view length of 1. So what the heck is happening? I should be seeing nothing but the clear color. But I am not, which leads me to believe that something here is wrong. Because this code should be saying, you know, we are creating a new read FBO. We are binding to it. We are attaching a texture to it. And then we are, saying we're reading from this color attachment, we're binding a drawing frame buffer, and then we are blitting from the read frame buffer to the draw frame buffer. That should be writing something not transparent over the entire view. But it isn't. Or something, I mean, it shouldn't be transparent. Like the normal Godot rendering is happening. It should be filling with the clear color. What's going on here? I mean, there's a possibility that the viewport is wrong, so we're drawing it just to like, nothing in the corner. There's a possibility that this texture doesn't really exist, or is 0 here, which would just lead to us clearing the texture that's attached to the color attachment 0 on this frame buffer. So let's start with, we'll print out the texture, which will either be an integer or something nully. Texture equals texture. Or no, hang on. P texture will be something integery or nully, but texture itself will either be an object or something nully. We'll print them both out. And then the viewport and I guess, yeah, this will be a lot of stuff. Viewport X, comma, viewport Y, comma, viewport width, comma, viewport height. No comma at the end. All right. So this will help us investigate both of those possibilities. Is the viewport invalid, or is the texture invalid? Those are the only things I can think of right now that could possibly cause an issue here. We have views. This method I think is right, frame buffer texture 2D, and we could double check that. I do not have, you know, all the OpenGL methods correctly memorized. So GL frame buffer texture 2D. I would have loved to have gotten some sort of OpenGL reference, but I did not. I got some random people's problems. So target attachment, texture target, texture level. Yeah. Attaches a level of a texture object to a logical buffer to the currently bound frame buffer, or as a logical buffer to the currently bound frame buffer. Yeah, I think this is the right method. Okay, so let's compile. Let's see what we get. So it looks like we have about 10 minutes left in the stream. If nothing else, I mean, we solved a big part of the rendering issue. We know what was leading to that pile of errors, and we fixed it. We still have another rendering issue. I would love to be done with rendering, honestly. I'd love to be done with rendering and just be focusing on input. Once we get that, I think I can mostly go out of panic mode with regard to WebXR. I really want it to be working at least as good as Godot 3 when Godot 4.0 releases. And I can go back to half working on this and half working on some of my other projects. All right, let's export. This month, I really wanted to work on porting SG Physics 2D to Godot 4, and I did not really. I did a little bit of work at the beginning of the month. There's I think only one more feature I wanted to add to SGPhysics 2D before doing the port, and it's relatively simple. It's a lot of busy work, but it's nothing hard. It's basically just adding a physics server similar to the normal Godot physics server so that you can allocate resources within the physics engine without having to create a node. And the purpose of that is to make it easier to add collision objects to tile maps. Right now, people have to spawn like just a crap ton of nodes, like in the thousands of numbers of nodes, to put collision objects on a tile map. And I don't know, generally speaking, you don't want to create thousands of nodes. So the viewport looks right. The texture looks like a real texture. I mean, maybe the texture exists, but like its dimensions are 0 by 0? What else could be happening? Or the texture is filled with nothing but alpha, but like that doesn't make any sense because the clear color should fill it with gray. Man, anybody have any other ideas? I am open to suggestions. If the color space is mixed, gray will become black. So the thing is, you guys are seeing black, but I'm not seeing black on my phone. What I'm seeing is the pass-through camera, which doesn't get sent through DevTools, which is why it looks black. But if we were seeing black, that would actually tell me that we are rendering something over the view. But I'm actually just seeing the camera. I'm seeing my room. Hey, El Snarko, welcome to the stream. No worries. I'm a little bit out of my depth when working in rendering as well. What could this be? I mean, here, let's commit the one change we know actually fix things. Well, that was weird. I don't know why the first commit didn't work. Okay. Fix error crash. But we still don't have it rendering. I think all the remaining changes are just printfs and bug stuff. I wish we could run this through RenderDoc, and then I could like see the texture. But we're just like working blind here. Would the cube not render if you were far away? So yeah, I mean, that is a possible thing. That is a thing that can happen, but I think we would see different symptoms. I think we would see my entire view covered with gray rather than the pass-through camera. But I'm seeing nothing. It's like nothing's being rendered because it should be rendering something opaque. Hmm. Yeah. Maybe just add the thing to make it transparent in the project and see if that works or causes additional problems. Yeah, we can try that. We can try that. No reason not to. Identify our viewport. What is our viewport called? Oh, because it's down here. Yep. All right. Let's export here. I mean, if this causes additional problems, I guess that just tells us that transparency is not working, which would be something we'd have to solve after we solve the current problem we're on. It'd at least give us a new problem. It was a new problem to poke into. So yeah, I'll show you guys that the pass-through camera is working once we get back in there. Yeah. So I see on my phone is my room back here. Me. Yeah, there I am. Hard to line this up. But yeah, that's the AR pass-through camera. Oh, interesting. So it looks like tracking was working because now the cube's over here. We just weren't seeing it. Here, let me enter AR again. Can I? Or did it like totally break? Haha, it totally broke. Okay, so there's another problem too. Let's refresh. Now I'm going to try to put the cube in a specific spot before I come out of AR. So I enter AR. Then let's say I get real close to this cube. And now let's exit out of AR. Huh. So I guess I don't know how close I was to the cube because I couldn't see it, but I think tracking is working. I think tracking is working. I think the cube is where we think it is. It's something not rendering. Or so if we assume all this code is correct, which I think it seems like it is. Wait, hang on. GL texture 2D. This kind of makes it seem like we need to do GL bind texture, GL texture 2D texture, doesn't it? Doesn't that seem like we need to have that there? I mean, it's weirdly redundant because we have these here too. Okay, let's just look at this one more time. Specifies a 2D target texture, 2D multi-star between cube and faces to be attached to. We have code like this in C++. Let's go compare this with it is rasterizer GLES3, which has blit render target to screen. So Or we don't do the exact same thing here because we have a pre-existing FBO that does the right thing. Let's just try this. Let's just try this, and while it's compiling, I will go look for some code to compare it with. Did it get saved? It did. Okay. That also means we should unbind the texture. Let's get back over here. So screw unbinding the texture. I don't feel like looking up what the parameter name is. we'll just try this. We'll just try this, see what it does. And if it works, then we'll worry about the right parameter name to get what was the previously bound texture, and then return to binding that at the end. Maybe. Oh, and we're already like over time. Okay, so this is the last thing we're gonna try, and then I will say goodbye to you, my friends. Okay, so I was gonna go look at, this would be texture storage for GLES3, and where we are creating this would be update render target. So an update render target, we are creating an FBO, which we are bound to. We are bound to it. We are bound to the texture only because we're creating the texture. I don't know. Let's see if this works. All right, compilation finished. Let's export. Hey, Gamma Games, welcome to the stream. Yes, it is i3. Previously, I was using Ion. That's a very popular question. I like rarely go a stream where someone doesn't ask me what windowing manager I use. Now I'm using like a reasonably popular one, i3. Like lots of people use i3. Nobody uses Ion. Okay. Yeah, Linux is my main dev machine. When I've been working on that OpenGL, OpenXR issue, I've been doing it mostly on my Windows box, but I do practically no development on my Windows box. My Windows box is primarily used for gaming. No real work. All right, that wasn't the issue. That wasn't the issue. Not unless I'm just like looking in the wrong direction for this cube. Now that we have the transparency stuff enabled. Yeah. No success there. Okay, well, we solved one problem. We're one step closer to this working. I am flabbergasted as to why it isn't working, but a lot of streams end that way. A lot of times we come to the end and I'm like, I don't know what's happening, and then I figure it out by the end of the day. Maybe that'll happen again this time. In any case, thank you everyone for coming to the stream. I hope you all have a great weekend. Much success on your projects. And yeah, one problem at a time, Micah says. I concur. Thank you everyone. Take care. Bye-bye.